Hello and welcome to this interview here on Money Paathshaala. Joining me today is someone who's trying to build something very interesting, which is a technology solution to actually enabling people to manage what they leave behind. Now, let's try and understand this. We talk a lot about investment, which is the part of your life where you actually build money. You save, you invest, and you build money to meet your goals. But almost every day, and especially during the COVID years, we have seen how fragile life is. Now, what happens when you're gone? Sometimes it may be out of old age and you may have time to plan. But what if it is a sudden death? And what happens to your money then? Obviously, you build your money to leave something behind for your near and dear ones. So, how do you manage to do that? Is what Darsh Golechha is trying to achieve. He is the founder at Legacynext. So let's speak to him about what his views are. Thanks very much, Darsh. Estate planning, as most financial planners talk about, is a very integral part of a financial plan. So my first question to you is, what are you seeking to do through your tech platform? And then we can discuss a few more things.
Definitely. First off, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much, Vivek, for having me. It's exciting to be a part of conversations like this, which are hopefully going to be intellectually stimulating and very exciting for people to hear as well. So, thank you once again. To begin and to answer your question, in fact, I'll just tell you a bit of a story. And this was during the time when we were all going through a huge turmoil in a sense when it was during COVID, and a lot of things were happening, and when we were all going through, there was a lot of conversations that were happening around people dying and people not having family members were not being properly thought of. They were very depressed. There was a lot of mental health issues, uh, and it was just very chaotic, so to speak, right? And when we were, and when I personally was also sort of down with COVID once. I mean, I also got COVID once or twice. The entire conversation that was going on, and this is very kudos to a lot of these publications and media folks as well, right? Because they sort of brought about a lot of information out there saying what is actually the reality and what is actually going on, right? And it actually was an article in one of the newspapers. I wouldn't want to name it here, but it's a very prominent newspaper, and that sort of got me going on this journey, right? It was an article. I'll also tell you what it was about, right? And it was all about someone losing, like a son or a daughter losing their mother in an ICU because they did not have access to right documents to submit in a hospital, and the hospital refused to admit them, right? And that for me was moving, to be so to speak, and very heartbreaking, because you don't want a lack of documentation to lead to a person's life, right? And that sort of changed that process or that thought process in me, saying that there is definitely something out there. And when it comes to this entire process, right? And we didn't even, I personally had not touched inheritance even there, right? And then quickly I moved on to doing some more research. I went on and I did a little bit more of an R&D into what exactly is this problem of people, right? Like, what is it that people really face when it comes to these situations? And I realized that it's not just one documentation, it's an entire process altogether, right? It's an entire system, and that system is very difficult for people to navigate through. It's almost like going 50 years ago and telling me, hey, I need to open a pension account, where to go, what to do. I mean, no one had any clue. And it's almost like that today. I mean, people are scattered. You see, every day there are 5 posts on Twitter minimum that I come across. right? There are people commenting. There is someone, putting out something and saying that, I've lost this, my money is still stuck there. And imagine the plight of people that would be there if today there is about 1.25 lakh crore. That's the amount that's on multiple news sources and websites. And even the government has recently, the other day, come about and shared some information on this, saying that there is an entire piece of unclaimed money that's lying. And imagine if that's the amount of money that's lying unclaimed. That sort of shook me, right? And then I was like, if that is the value that is lying unclaimed, there is a problem in the system altogether. And that's where the journey began. And since then we did, in we when we first realized in inheritance transfer, or post death, things to do post death in India are, for an individual, they are unfortunately not that seamless. They should be more seamless, like, because think of it like opening a bank account. Today, when we're opening a bank account, we don't want someone to go through 10 steps, right? Like, remember, I'm sure when you're definitely, a bit earlier in the age scope than me, I guess.
You're
So
commenting on my gray hair, aren't you?
no, no, I was I was just thinking whether or not to say it, but the reason, I'm even sort of mentioning this is you have some more experience than me, at least a few years, I'm assuming. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that even if, we have that level of bank account, right? Like when you opened your first bank account, even in fact, when I opened my first bank account, it was back in university when I was in college. I think my first bank account was opened by then. We had to go through a, bunch of things to sort of just open up a bank account. My first internship with Goldman Sachs, I had to sign like 20 papers to get my, salary account, sort of, done there. So
Hmm.
my point is, if that was the same, and think of it now, right? Now what do we need to do? Now we just need to click a button. We get a call from the bank saying, how is it supposed to be done? Or we already have an application where the bank will send you to, link they will send you, and all you need to do as an individual is just click on that link, and upload your certain documents, and then just it's pretty seamless. Like, it's about 5 minutes. Like, recently, a few some months or a couple of years ago, I opened a new bank account in a new bank. It was pretty seamless. So that's the level of efficiency that I envisioned when I thought of this. And I my goal, personally, is to see this done in 10 hours, right? This process today takes about 4 to 12 years in India on an average for one individual to do this. So that's my goal. So yeah, I think it's a very long answer to a.
No, no, I'm glad you qualified that. So let's structure this conversation into several parts. So let's first talk about when one says estate planning. I mean, one typically thinks of a will, right? And again, around there are several issues. Most financial planners I have spoken to, they say that you don't need to register a will, and yet most people end up going to lawyers. And I've spoken to a few people who have, paid 50,000 rupees and maybe more, not for a very large asset. It's not like some family office. It's just an individual, who may at best have an ancestral property or the parents' home or something like that. So, how do you help people navigate the process of the will? One, of course, in India, it's a emotional issue. You don't broach it with somebody, so that's one problem. And I mean, there's little one can do about that. But except make people aware that the minute you have some asset, you make sure you write your will. But other than that, how do you help solve that problem of making a will, storing it, getting it done at a fairly low cost? How do you ensure that?
Sure. So I'll answer that question in two things, right? One is the process, and the second is the cost, right? So I'll come to the cost part a bit later. First, I'll just talk about the process. So that we do, and what is currently there, like you rightly mentioned, right? So the current will process in India is uh, is in a way very interesting. It's actually a policy level thing as well that I'm very keen to sort of have conversations with government stakeholders on this, because I'm really focused on also seeing that part of the element change, but keeping that for now, as a piece that we can't really, that's not really moved a lot very recently. So I'm just gonna let it be for a minute, and I'm just gonna talk about the process with the current policy in mind, right? So with the current policy in mind, we do have, you know, very simple points, right? So the first, what does the will say? What does the policy say? That first, what we need is a document, like you rightly mentioned, which can be created. It can be handwritten. So today, if I am or you, we, any of us is creating our will, all we need to do is we just need to, write whatever assets that we have, and we can distribute it in whatever way we want. So let's say, I have parents, I have a grandmother, I have a brother, and let's say I have a spouse, for example, right? So we have five people that I want to distribute this, inheritance or assets to. Now, what does an individual do then, right? That individual can just create it on a piece of paper, sign it, have a couple of witnesses along with them, and then it's a valid legal will according to the current sort of state of affairs that are there. Now, anyone can make a will in India, right? It's as simple as that. Now, the question is, should you register? Now, that's a very very interesting question because um, the purpose of a will, right, is not to ensure that it's a that your money is 150% going to go to those individuals, right? That's definitely your intent. Now, the thing that we all need to realize is that nothing is foolproof. We all know that, right? I mean, we unfortunately that's the case. So what we do is we have to make it closest to foolproof. So which is what we say is 99.99%, right? There's always that element of little risk that'll unfortunately always be there. Now, the goal of us as a company is to ensure that we are able to provide this process in a seamless, cost effective, and positive manner to the individual, right? Comforting, caring manner to any individual. Because at the end of the day, this is something that every individual is extremely attached to. Like making a will is a very emotional thing for people, right? Now, the way we have realized is that when we have created a platform, our technology platform, what that does is that which we call as Legacynext is there on the App Store. You can check it out as well. So basically, the goal is that an individual can download the application, they can register themselves, and I'll come to the what the cost is later. But the goal of the platform is to enable you to make a will in 5 minutes, right? Now, we understand that there is a huge pain point for people just thinking about death in India, right? Like awareness in India when it comes to death in itself is not something that people accept very easily, and that is something that is there because of our culture and because of multiple other factors, and that's something which overnight cannot be changed, right? Like you rightly said, it's a matter of awareness. So we internally, I personally also think that awareness has to happen, not this from a company level. We should do more, like as a company we should do more, but we also want a lot of people around us to help us with this awareness. Like we all the lawyers that we have, we also want a lot of banks. We are partnering with banks, we're partnering with insurance companies, we're partnering with multiple stakeholders in the BFSI segment to in order to build this sort of conversation around inheritance in the first place, right? So that's number one that needs to be done. The second thing that needs to be done is automation of this process, because making a will should not be an expensive affair, right? It should not be an affair which costs you 1 lakh or 2 lakh rupees, because it's just if it's a simple will, yes. Now there are multiple things within that. So there can be a joint will, right? So let's say spouses coming together and making their own will. Now, in situations like these, yes, there is definitely a requirement of an advisor, for example, because there is certain elements which cannot be technologically done yet. So that's number two on the conversation on will. Now, number three is the premise of creating a will should not just be on paper. That's what we are also working on. So we are also working on a premise wherein we are able to digitally create this on blockchain, right? Now, what that means is that let's say if I have made a will or you have made a will, for example, right? Now, when you've made a will, you want to, what happens is the will is a piece of paper, right? Now, the entire purpose is that it has to be validated, right? It has to be foolproof. Like I mentioned, taking a point from the first point is that it should be as foolproof as possible, right? Now, when we are saying as foolproof as possible, that can only happen when it is created on a technology that enables authentication of the person who's making the will as well. Otherwise, I make a will, I sign it. I mean, there are cases of forgery that happen, right? There are cases of in India. If you look at the amount of domestic issues that happen, the domestic cases that are there in India, there is a huge percentage of them that is only on inheritance
Mm.
in India. That's family domestic issues, and that is a big conversation to be had, right? Because if so many issues in India are happening because of inheritance in itself, it means that there is a problem on the creation of the will as well. So that is also something that we are working on. So, and that, like I mentioned, it has to be linked in some sense with the government as well, because only then will the complete technology will be able to sort of accomplish the vision of getting like, it done in a matter of 10 hours. Otherwise, alone, it's very difficult for us to only go ahead and do it right now. So
Mm. Mm.
that's and on the cost. Now, coming to the final piece, that's the cost. So we currently have our will as part of our subscription package, complimentary. We don't charge
Okay.
anything for a single standard will, right? So we have a subscription package for Legacynext, wherein an individual can come in and they can purchase the subscription of Legacynext on our website. Now, when they purchase a subscription, what do they get? They get multiple things as part of inheritance, and one of them, I'll come to the other parts as well as we go ahead, but one of the key parts is a complimentary will, which they can make at in a matter of 5 minutes, and it's an automated will. So you don't have to write things down, you don't have to figure out what table to distribute it in, who to distribute it to. It's very automated. So for example, you can also add your family members onto the platform. You can also share this will with your family members if that's something that you want. So we have created that technology as well, which is what we call as legacy share. So wherein you can not just share your will, but you can also share a lot of information about yourself, which you want to pass it down to your family members as a next step, which is what we realize is very important amongst individuals, right? Because people do really want to share a lot of information, like medical information, for example, or legal information, or financial information, for example. I mean, there is a lot of information which we want to pass it down or to our next generations, but we don't know how to. We Most of us, I'm sure, have created a Google Drive, and they would be more keen to sort of put it all there, and then, like, my father did it for us like a few years ago. So I realized that if that's the case, then every family must want to do it. I mean, I'm assuming. So we sort of built that entire system on a platform as well. And lastly, this subscription started at a cost of 1,000 rupees on our website. So you can purchase it starting 1,000 rupees, and it's a lifetime sort of a thing. So every year, you just need to pay 1,000 rupees. It's a fixed price. So that's how it works.
Let's talk about documentation. I think that's the other big problem, isn't it? I mean, recently I was talking to a friend who lost her mother, and while they were going through her papers, they discovered she had done some investment 25 years ago. The branch no longer exists. The bank doesn't have the records. So, and I'm sure this is something we've all dealt with at some point. That maybe it's better now because a lot of information is online. So at least, as you said, you can hold it, keep it somewhere on your computer. But I think, especially in the earlier days, and where people would just be investing, they would not even, the family members wouldn't even know that such an investment was there. You keep hearing people suddenly discovering some bunch of share certificates lying once the person has passed on. uh, Documentation, while yes, these days you do have good financial planners, unfortunately, they're too few for a country of our size, who probably have all your financial details. And, in the event of you passing away, they will convey all that, to the family. But do you solve for that documentation problem? And especially for the larger India, which does not have access to good financial planners, because that's again an area, a separate conversation where we need lots more good financial planners in this country. But anyway, how are you solving for the documents problem?
That's a very good question, and you know very recently, in fact, this was when I had the thought of uh, you know uh, building up our venture. So I'm sure you would have heard of the account aggregator ecosystem, right? That's sort of come up, and so we are really focused on creating a platform, or the platform that we have created. It's sort of uh, envisioned, the vision of that was to 100% focus on this problem in the context of inheritance, which is very, very important to think of. Now, let me give you an example. So, when we have the account aggregator system that is going to come up very soon, at least 100%, right? What that does, it collates a lot of financial information. Now, the government 2 days ago has recently launched something, or what you call is Udgam, UDGAM, Udgam portal, right? Now, what that does is it helps an individual track their unclaimed money of someone in their family. So let's say if an individual has passed away in the family, the other family members can check whether or not there is some unclaimed money in all of these financial institutions of that particular individual. Right now, the interesting part about that is that what it does, though, it's a good start to solving the problem, right? Which is what I would like to. I'm really glad that the government has realized this as a problem and they're working on it, and we are happy to work with them if in any form. And we are in fact also looking to work with a couple of institutions. But coming to what is it that the government can do, and what is it that we are doing in that problem space, right? So the first thing is, inheritance is the reason why there is inheritance problem. The second mini problem statement, one is not creation of a will, right? And the second mini problem statement within that is the access to documents within family members, like you rightly mentioned. Now, how are we solving that? What we are doing is we are creating that safe space for a family to share current financial information. So let's say if there is a financial information that I have today, I want to share it with my family today, because my family does not have access to that information today. And in case something happens to me, or even in other day-to-day manners, right? Let's say if there is a accident, doesn't have to happen to me, but if there is an accident, for example, a family would want to have access to these insurance documents, right? If there is a if there is a if there is a fixed deposit, there are people who have forgotten fixed deposits. I mean, there are, if you look at the statistics, unfortunately there are people who have lost track of where which demat account is lying, where which fixed deposit is lying, and so on and so forth. So first, what we enable is all of these individuals to collate their complete financial information. We have automated a few parts on our platform. So let's say you don't need to completely put in manually upload all this information, right? You can also use AP. We also have an automation wherein you can link your Aadhaar or your PAN, and all of this automatically gets uploaded onto the system using the account aggregator framework that I was talking about. So that sort of helps us build this sharing mechanism as well on the platform, and which is why we are really happy about what the government is doing. But there needs to be more done in this space. There has to be more that has to be facilitated across BFSI now. Like, for example, how do we come together as an industry and identify the parts that are there? Because this problem is not just information anymore, right? This problem is even beyond that. Like, let's say I have the information, the process after that is so broken, for example, that it just makes it very difficult for any individual having the documents also to take care of these things, assuming everyone has the documents. So yeah.
Wonderful talking to you, Darsh. Thank you very much for joining me. This is indeed a very, very crucial and critical issue, not just financially, but emotionally as well. And I do hope and wish you the very best in creating what you're seeking to do. And I do hope that all stakeholders come together to create more awareness around this. Thank you very much for joining me today, Darsh. Thank you.
No, appreciate it, and thank you for having me, Vivek. It's a pleasure chatting with you, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.